Welcome to another episode of You and Me and Multiple Sclerosis. My name is Pam, and I've been living with multiple sclerosis for 37 years. Well, here in the Pacific Northwest, it's finally starting to warm up a little bit, and the rains, they're not quite so bad, and the pandemic restrictions are pretty well lifted in most places now. So I'm thinking, gosh, it would be really fun to take some road trips. And in fact, I'd even had one kind of planned. Thanks to the price of gas, though, I'm not really sure how much we'll do. But my husband assures me that even with the price of gas, he thinks we can probably do a little bit of road trips and traveling. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about what that means for those of us who have multiple sclerosis, or at least what it means for me. When we were younger, my husband and I were a lot more spontaneous. We could wake up on a Saturday morning and say, hey, why don't we go to the bookstore in Portland, which is like, at that time was about 4 hours away. We'd just make a day trip, go to the bookstore, come back. We did a lot of that kind of thing. But now that I'm older and with my multiple sclerosis being what it is, I don't quite have that flexibility anymore. But it's still possible to get out and do things. I just have to be a lot more planful about it than my natural tendencies would lead me to be. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what I do to help make the trips easier for me, to get more enjoyment out of them and less concern and worry about taking care of all the little annoyances that go with having multiple sclerosis. Well, the first thing that's very important is having an itinerary. In the past, as I said, we were pretty spontaneous, and we might just go exploring for the day, driving around, not aimlessly exactly, but just, more spur of the moment. But now we really plan the itinerary, which means that every day we have a destination in mind and the route by which we plan to get there. And that has made a lot of difference. One of the things that I know is that I need to stick to interstates and avoid the back roads as much as possible. And the main reason for that is that there are way more places to stop if one needs to do that. If you need to find a potty stop, it's not likely you're going to find something in the middle of nowhere, as opposed to on one of the major interstates where every mile or so, at least, you're going to find some kind of exit with either a Love's gas station or a McDonald's or someplace where you can stop, go potty, maybe get something to drink, whatever you need. I remember when we were going back and forth across the country, we usually follow the interstate all the way. But there is a point at which if you take this cutoff road, it shaves about almost an hour off the trip. So my husband prefers to take that. But the trouble with that cutoff road is that it really goes out into the middle of almost nowhere. And there really aren't any places to stop. So for that hour, I have to make absolutely sure that I don't have any need to stop. And that's been interesting at times. But it actually, time is important too. You get awfully tired if you're on the road for too long. And I'm very conscious of the fact that my husband is the driver, and I don't want to wear him out. He has to do all the driving these days. He's a very good sport about it. But why would I want to overtax him? So that has been important to us, to just know where we're going, what our route will be, and that's made a big difference for me. And an important corollary to that is making reservations so that we know that when we get to our destination, we have a place waiting for us to stay, and we're not surprised by some unexpected local event that fills up all the hotel rooms on us. We make the reservations planfully as well. I'd like to get rooms on the ground floor. So one of the things that I will ask them for is, of course, non-smoking room, but I will also ask if they have a room on the ground floor. I learned the hard way that if a room is not on the ground floor, there's no guarantee that there's an elevator or an inside staircase even. And that can be very difficult. Recently, we stayed in a motel that had, it was on, the room that we had was on the second floor, and the staircase getting up to it was steep and not in the best of repair, I will have to say. I was a little bit concerned, but I did manage to get up and down it more than once, but I'm not going to do that again. That reminded me that you take nothing for granted. You don't assume that when you get to where you're going, they're going to have the kind of room that you want. One of the best rooms I ever stayed in was ADA compliant, so it was fitted out for someone with a disability. It had a walk-in shower, which I think is the very best thing there is. Really would love to have one of those in my own house, but I don't think we will do that because we only have one bathroom, and so if we take out the tub that's in there, that might not be good for the ultimate resale value of the house, but that remains to be seen. But be it as it may, I really did like that walk-in shower. The showers that they have in most of the motels that we've stayed at, they now have decided that they really like these curved shower curtain rods. Why is it that? I don't know. It must make it easier for somebody, but it makes it really, really difficult for me because those things, they just give me a sense that things are off kilter, that I'm off balance, that I'm not going to be able to stand up. And so that kind of leads me right into the next thing, is that when I'm going on a road trip that will be more than a day or so, I want to make sure that I have everything I need with me. Obviously, a trip for any length of time, priority is making absolutely sure I have my medications with me. Any kind of MS medication needs to be a priority. I remember back when I was taking the Copaxone injections every day, that posed a whole nother level of problem because you have to keep them cool. So not only do you have to make sure that the motel that you're staying at has a refrigerator in the room, you need to bring a cooler with you to keep the shots cool during your drive during the day. So that can get kind of challenging. But there are other devices and assistive things that I bring with me to make things easier when I'm on the road. I'm pretty flexible when it comes to mattresses and whatnot, but when I go into the bathroom and I see the tubs that they have there, I get feeling wobbly almost right away. So what I've learned to do is to bring with me a couple of things that I use at home all the time. One of them is a four-legged stool that fits in the tub that I sit on when I wash my hair. The other thing that I do is I have a couple of assistive supports. They're not grab bars, I will caution you, because they just hold on with suction. You probably wouldn't want to put a lot of weight on them, but just knowing that they're there really helps me a lot. And so I will bring one of those and have my husband attach that to the shower stall wall. And that way I can more or less take a shower if I need to on the road. The thing that I have to be careful of course, is not to forget to take them with me when I go. So usually right after I get out of the shower, I take those things down and I put them out with the rest of our luggage so that they get packed up and taken with us. And I've left dog dishes behind before, but thankfully I've never forgotten my stool or my assistive support bar. The other thing that I'll always bring with me is my cane. I think I've mentioned before, I'm still ambulatory, and when I am familiar with my surroundings and they're not terribly challenging, I don't usually bring my cane or take my cane with me because I don't really need it, and it often kind of gets in the way. Obviously, it ties up one hand so that you don't have two hands to do things with, and so on. But when I'm on the road, I just assume that everywhere I go is unfamiliar terrain and that I might hurt myself. The one time that I did not do that, I was helping my husband load up the truck after we had stayed the night in the motel, and I was looking out past where my feet were, and next thing I know, I'm sprawled on the pavement because there was a step down that I didn't even see. Now, having my cane, I don't know if that would have kept me from hurting myself or not, but I didn't have my cane. I had my hands full, actually, and I messed up my ankle pretty good on that trip. I will never forget that day. So I've learned always take my cane with me, even if I think I'm going to be fine. Now, my last piece of advice actually would probably work just as well for somebody who didn't have MS or need any particular assistive devices. But one thing that we learned to do when we were traveling back and forth across the country, because we had family and friends in New York State, but our house was in Washington State, the system that we had developed used these little notebooks that you can buy in any stationery store or in the drugstore even. They're really, really handy because they will allow you to write out everything that you need to know for any given day. And that way you don't have all these maps and phone numbers and different things on all different pieces of paper that you have to keep track of. I'll show you what this looks like for us, and you'll get an idea of how useful it is. So here's a page out of that notebook that I was telling you about. This is from a trip that we took several years ago from Washington to New York State. And so what I did was every day I put the destination for the day on the right-hand side of the page. So as you see there, our destination for the day was Swanton, Ohio. I think we started in Colfax, Iowa, and we went to Swanton, Ohio. And it was Wednesday, October 26th. I don't know what year it was. But as you see there on the right-hand side, what I've done is I've put the phone number of the motel that we're staying at, the address, so that my husband can be sure to get it in the GPS, what exit it is off the highway, and any other information about the destination that we need to know. And then on the left-hand side, during the course of the day, I make a note of exits that we either stopped at or that we thought looked pretty promising that we might have been able to stop at if we'd wanted to. And the exit number and the amenities that were off that exit. So you can see there where I found one exit that had a Pilot and a McDonald's, another exit that had a Pilot, etc., so that you could plan for the return trip where you might stop. And that helped us because every year we just kept doing the same thing over and over again. And if I made a master one, if I took the time to make a master list of all the different places that we stopped that had interesting things off the different exits, that would probably be very useful to us, but I haven't really gotten that ambitious. The other thing that we were doing was calculating our mileage. I think that the price per gallon and the age of our truck probably would make that a pretty depressing exercise these days. So I don't know that we'll continue that. But this notebook idea, these are keepers. We're never going to throw these away because I think next time we go back to visit my family who now don't live in New York anymore, they live in Vermont, that would make an even longer trip. These notebooks are going to come in very, very handy for us. There's some ideas for you for traveling, and I hope that you do get to do some traveling this summer. It's nice that we're sort of back on regular footing, that the worst of the pandemic is behind us, that people are getting out and about again. It's a wonderful thing, and it would be hard to have yet another summer where we felt like we were pretty much stuck in our hometown. I'd be curious to know what other tips and tricks you might have for traveling with multiple sclerosis or even just traveling in general. What kinds of things do you do to make the trip more enjoyable? Sitting in a car for a long period of time is not usually a person's cup of tea, but it can be a lot less stressful or a lot less boring if you have stuff figured out ahead of time. And at least that's true for me. But I'd be curious to know, is that true for you as well? Let me know in the comments what you think of all of this. Thank you so much for watching. Take really, really good care of yourself. And I'll see you again in my next video.